By mid-2011, I started a secret savings account. I knew that he wasn't going to let us go. I knew that he wasn't going to divorce easily. I knew that he would never leave us alone. He would say, it's me and you forever, or it's just death. That led to the divorce. And a week after the divorce was final, that's when he tried to kill me. My name is Jennifer. I met and married my ex-husband in 2005, and it was a quick from dating to marriage process. And there was, now that I reflect on it, a lot of red flags in the beginning: possessiveness, anger, and very insistent that we get married. Would say things like, now that I found you, I just want to make sure I keep you. And getting married is the only way to do that. I wore down and said yes. In 2006, I got pregnant with my first son. And while I was pregnant, physical violence began. Almost always, the physical violence was somewhat detached from me. He didn't hit me, slap me, kick me. He just did those things right around me. Lots of anger, manipulation, coercion, the incessant insistence upon something until you wear down and say yes. There wasn't physical violence on me for so many years that I never thought of the things that he did as abusive. If you think of telling somebody your most intimate secrets and they twist it and they use it against you in some way later in very mean, torturous ways, breaking your trust, telling other people, making fun of you in public around your family and friends. If he was angry, he would hit or kick the walls, break doors, tear up pictures, throw a glass. I didn't ever think of that as abuse because I didn't get hit with it. At one point, this big beer stein threw that across the room and it sailed by my head and hit the wall. Beer is everywhere, glass is everywhere, and that's physical abuse. And those pieces are all important because they paint the picture of who he was and why he escalated over the years to where he went. In 2008, I came home to somebody who was suicidal. Out of that, a lot of things came up. He would say, "You saved my life. I just love you so much. I love you more than your mom loves you." Then the narrative became, "I just hate your family and I love you so much and they don't love you like I do." Then things like refusing to let them come. And all of my family lived out of town, so they would come and they would stay with us because we had the space. Couldn't do that anymore. We decided to have another baby, and so along came Cruz. One of the most sad things to admit is that there's a lot about his first 2 years of life that I just don't even remember. I don't have those, like, when did he walk the first time? I don't remember those things. I just, at that point, didn't want them to think that it's normal to wake up and start drinking beer at 9 or 10 a.m. and be passed out by 3 or 4 p.m. And I would come home from work and I would pick up the boys and we would just leave. I just did anything that I could do to fill that 3 or 4 hours before it was their bedtime. By mid-2011, I knew that I had to get out. I was terrified to leave. And I was terrified to leave before I even named it abuse, right? Like I was divorcing him because he had a disease called alcoholism for which he did not want treatment. That's why I divorced him. I did not divorce him because he was abusive or mean, least of all because I didn't love him. I cried many nights, too many to count, that I was leaving somebody who had a disease. And would I leave somebody who had diabetes and decided not to treat it? It was horrible. It was horrible. There was a very slow transition in terms of recognizing how serious the alcoholism was. But that was completely separate from recognizing any abuse. The boys and I went to Willie's house. We were going to have dinner, all of us together. When we arrived, he was already beyond drunk, just completely plastered. I didn't want to stay. Tensions were really high, and he was trying to prevent me from leaving when he strangled me. We somehow did get out. I called 911, which is a miracle in and of itself, because I still had no idea what had just happened. And that doesn't make sense, but I didn't. I still was like, okay, we just got to get out of here. You know, it's going to get bad. The police officer said, I want you to go in the morning to the Family Justice Center. And he gave me this brochure and he circled the phone number. I mean, he just got eye to eye with me and said, they're going to help you file for a protection order. You need to not stay at your house tonight. Go somewhere where he doesn't know. Do you have a place to go? And I just kept thinking, you know, I have a scrape on my arm, but that's it. Like, my neck was red, but like, why are you so serious? But by the time I got home, which was only about a mile away from his house, we were going to co-parent, I was shaking and sobbing, and I called a friend and said, can we come over to your house? Willie just assaulted me. And she said, we're coming over. And her husband came over and they helped me pack a bag. And thank God for good friends. The single aha moment was the day after he tried to strangle me, in the morning when I was getting ready and I had bruises all up and down my arms. I called my friend in and I was like, look, like what happened? And she was like, I know, I started to see them develop last night, but I didn't want to say anything. One thing that I didn't know for a very long time, after reading everything I have read about domestic violence and strangulation, is that there's many symptoms. There's the things that you think of, bleeding at your neck, losing consciousness, petechiae, which is the little broken blood vessels around your eyes or sometimes around your mouth, but other things like losing control of your bladder. I didn't know that you should report that to the police. I was just ashamed that I had peed my pants, and I didn't want to tell them that, so I didn't. And I didn't know for a couple of years after that it's something super important to tell them. And so I didn't report those things. He was not arrested that night. They didn't have enough probable cause, so he wasn't arrested for several weeks. It was that next day, and I'm sitting across the table from this DV advocate who's going over this. She had a form and it had all these questions, and it had this small box that was there that is an assessment of the dangerousness. And there are 7 questions specific to that. Is the offender possessive? Is there a recent loss or separation within the family? Do they have access to guns? Have they ever attempted suicide? This sweet young woman, and she's holding this form on a clipboard, and she puts it down and she leans in. She said, I need you to understand how much danger you're in right now. When somebody tries to strangle you, they're trying to kill you. You need to move out of your house. You need to go to a place where he can't find you. And I remember backing up in the chair and being like, no, you don't understand. Clearly we've miscommunicated. That's not me. I remember the urge of running so strong. And I remember going back to my friend's house and actually that's about all I can remember, is that I left. Like, the rest of the day is gone, because it was all about, oh my God, like everything is different now. Everything has to be different. On September 11th, 2017, we were supposed to have his weekly visitation, and he emailed me and told me that he had to cancel because he hurt his back. Cancellations for the boys' visits were common. Friday morning, I woke up and was getting ready for work, and there was a text that said, call me ASAP. When I answered the phone, she was clearly sobbing, and she was saying, Jane and Paul are dead. Willie's in jail. We think it was him. The police have him. He's in Oregon. And she's just spewing all of this stuff. And I said, wait a second. Jane and Paul are gone. I just remember thinking, strangled them. That was my first thought. On the phone, I was upset. Obviously, I was sobbing and crying, and your kids don't not notice that. I just right away said, Grandma and Grandpa are gone. They died. The three of us cried together, and one of my very best friends is a child life specialist. And I called her and said, I don't know what to do. Like, they won't stop asking me what happened, and they're not dumb. So they were saying things like, why would Grandma and Grandpa die together? Why, when they were healthy, would they be dead at all? Bruce said, they had another good 20 years left. Why are they dead? The advice consistently is answer their questions. Only answer their questions. They won't ask more than they're ready for, but you have to answer them, and you have to answer them honestly. So Amy and I sat them down and said, what do you want to know? Ask the questions. 3 to 5 minutes maybe. Had gotten to the question of, Dad did it, didn't he? Or I think any human at any age to intuitively know the unspoken about their parent in that regard is really troubling. That they were so young and both clearly intuitively knew that it was their dad just breaks me. There's a very common sense part of my brain that says he's in prison and he can't get to you. But physically, it feels so different to be 1,000 miles away versus 20 miles away in a place where there are no memory triggers here. This is just wide open, brand new territory. This is only the three of us. This is not reminiscent at all of any of that past, and not in a way of running away from that, but in a way of opening up the space mentally and physically to just be. And that has been really beneficial. I loved where we lived, and I loved our little street, and we had fantastic neighbors that it was so important to be able to breathe freely, that it was something that we had to do. I see so much growth in them too, and so much freedom in telling only who they want to tell, It's so important to have people who know and love you anyway. It's also super important to be able to have that place where you can just go and just be a kid. We're not going to change domestic abuse and domestic violence through the criminal justice system. It's not working. It's completely failing in every agency in our country. The way we change it is culturally, is what we accept, what we expect, and what we teach. Teaching our kids, just like we teach them math and science and music and language, we need to be teaching them about appropriate relationship behaviors and consent, respect, how to deal with our emotions. Surviving and thriving ebbs back and forth. Sometimes I'm back in that raw place of just getting through the day or the hour. But more often than not anymore, I'm in that thriver position where we are making plans for our future, enjoying our time together, appreciating what we have. I'm pretty much a completely different person than I was before. The core of me is similar, but I have deeper and bigger and more capacity to love those things. So it's beautiful.